Hello, everybody, and welcome to Double R Sports' kind of halfway through the season top 50 MLB players. We've talked about doing this video for a long time, and we finally decided now is a good time because we're just coming off the All-Star break. So we're going to look at the top 50 players right now in Major League Baseball. Now, we're kind of weighing this list to be mostly based off this season. I'd say around half of this list is off the season, and the rest is based on a combination of both past performance and projection, and just the way we see their ability. But yeah, this is going to be a fun list, so let's get started with number 50.
All right, so coming in at number 50, we have Dodgers legend Clayton Kershaw. He's not nearly what he used to be in the mid-2010s, but he is still a great pitcher in today's league, even in year 16. Right now, he has a 2.55 ERA, a FIP of 3.53, and an xFIP of 3.27. He's pulling around 2.2 wins at the break, according to Fangraph, which is really, really good still for a guy in his 16th season. Some could argue maybe a little higher, some could argue maybe a little lower, but he feels like the right guy to kick off this list, and he's still very impressive and one of the best pitchers of all time, still. Ketel Marte is the definition of hard to rank. This season, he's been amazing with a 131 WRC plus and 2.4 wins at the break. However, last season, he wasn't as great. Year before, he was great, and the year before that, wasn't great. And if we go back even one more year before that, he had 2019, where he was one of the best players in all of baseball, being a top 3 National League MVP candidate. This guy is very inconsistent, as I've mentioned, but he deserves to be on the list, considering that his high highs are much higher than a lot of other players, especially for a position like second base. And not to mention, he's contributed greatly to his team's success this season.
The number 48 spot goes to Rafael Devers. Now, there's no doubt that Rafael Devers has been a top third baseman in baseball over the past few years. However, he's having a bit of a down year this season. He only has an 115 WRC plus as a guy whose main part of his game is offense, and he only has a 1.6 WAR. The defense isn't quite there, but he's hitting more home runs. He's a guy that almost fell off this list. However, if you look at his past performance and you see that he's had a near 7 WAR season, you realize that he's a guy that is top 50 caliber and deserves to be on a list of the best players in baseball.
Despite my undying hatred for the San Diego Padres franchise, Manny Machado has to be on this list. He has not been nearly as good as previous seasons, like his 2022 season where he was one of the best players in Major League Baseball, but he's still been good, putting up 1.9 wins above replacement according to Fangraphs at the All-Star break. We do see him being a little bit better so far this year and maybe even better next year, although I do have concerns with the swing, which requires a lot from his arms, and players like that, see Chris Bryant or others, don't last very far into their 30s, and I could see a quick decline in a few years here for him. And also, he should have re-signed with the Dodgers. Why would you sign with the Padres? Alex Bregman will always be controversial thanks to him being associated with the 2017 Astros team that cheated during the World Series. However, this should not keep him from being on the list. In 2018 and 2019, Alex Bregman was arguably the best player in baseball, putting up 8 and 8.2 wins above replacement respectively. After 2 down years in 2020 and 2021, he bounced back big time in 2022, putting up 5.5 wins above replacement and a 136 WRC+. Not to mention, his defensive output is amazing, being an elite defender at a premium position. This year, we expect him to rebound a bit as he's struggled, but a lot of players have struggled this year, and he has a lot of potential to rise back up even higher on this list in the future.
Now, this spot was a tough call between Gunnar Henderson and Josh Young, but I ended up going with Gunnar Henderson because he's been really heating up. He's a guy that walks a fair bit. He's a guy that's just an overall great offensive player, and he's shown some defensive prowess as well. He's catching Josh Young in WAR really quickly, despite again having a bit of a cold start. And I think he is definitely worthy of that number 1 prospect status that he's had, and he will be one of the great Orioles players for many years to come. Up next on the list is a guy who last year was a breakout player that was a bit of a surprise, and now this year he was an all-star starter, and that's Jonah Heim. Heim is one of the best catchers in all of baseball. He's hitting better than he ever has, and defensively he might be the best. His framing is incredible. He's putting up big WAR numbers with a 3.3 WAR, and he's a big part of why the Texas Rangers have been such a dominant force early in the season. Jonah Heim isn't necessarily a household name yet, but he's one of the most well-rounded players at his position in the game, and is a guy that really should be a dark horse kind of MVP top 10 finisher. If nobody's got me, I know Kyle Tucker's got me. Now, the numbers aren't as eye-popping for Tucker this year, however, there are some areas of his game that he's improved, mainly in terms of his plate discipline. He's walking more than he ever has and striking out less than he ever has. Again, he's not going to put up the biggest numbers, but he's going to be an 130 WRC plus guy who puts up around 5 wins a season. That's a top player in anybody's books.
For the past 7 to 8 seasons, whether it be in Philadelphia or in Miami, JT Realmuto has been one of the best catchers of this generation so far. In his time in Major League Baseball, he has put up 31 wins above replacement, which is awesome for a catcher. He's been a plus defender, a plus framer, and an amazing offensive catcher. And although this season, like many others, as already mentioned, he has not been quite as good, he's going to bounce back and put up another 120 WRC plus season and be good for years to come. Next up on the list is my personal favorite player, and that is Logan Webb of the San Francisco Giants. This guy is awesome, and he hasn't even reached his potential yet. Not only does he have good stats like ERA, FIP, xFIP, wins above replacement, and other stats, this guy eats up innings, and for a winning team that's trying to compete for a championship, that is extremely valuable. Compared to last season and years before, his K through 9 has gone up, his walks through 9 has gone down, and it seems that he's kind of finally becoming the elite pitcher that we all want him to be. This guy is great. I literally love him so much, and yeah, he's on our list.
Matt Chapman's just a guy that it feels like every year you can trust to be consistently good. He's going to put up like a 4 to 5 wins every season, and he's going to give you like an 115 to 125 WRC plus. This year, he started out really strong, definitely cooled a bit, but that's because he's not the best at making contact with the ball, but he does have good power, and he also has a really low chase rate. But he's a well-rounded player that's a pretty good base runner, an elite defender, and a pretty good hitter, and he's a huge part of a Blue Jays team that looks to make the postseason again this year. I'm going to go out and say it. Isaac Paredes is the most underrated player in baseball. He's top 10 in WRC plus so far this season with a 150, and he's almost at 3 WAR already. Isaac Paredes is a pulling machine. He has some of the craziest pulled fly ball numbers of any hitter, allowing him to have a pretty good home run total of 16 already, nearly matching last season's total in less games. Isaac Paredes is pretty good with the glove, he's got pretty good discipline, and he's just overall become one of the very best third basemen right under our noses.
As a Giants fan, it pains me to talk about Will Smith because the guy is just so good. For a catcher, he is absolutely insane on the offensive end, putting up a career 133 WRC plus, which is around 40 points better than the average for any catcher. The guy just rakes and puts up wins every season. He is one of the best offensive weapons in today's major leagues, and the only reason why he's not higher is because defensively he is not the best compared to some of his peers, but the guy just rakes every season, and he has to be on this list.
So Julio Rodriguez isn't quite the hitter that he was in his rookie season. I mean, 146 WRC plus as a rookie with 28 home runs, that's pretty insane. However, this year he's taken a step back and has a 105. But still, I've got a lot of faith in him. I think he's really going to turn it around. He is massively underperforming his expected numbers, and defensively, he's been one of the very best outfielders in all of baseball when you look at numbers such as his outs above average, which is in the 99th percentile. Julio Rodriguez might not be the offensive player we expected this year, but he really might bounce back in the second half, and he's still a top 50 player.
Jose Altuve is still a top 50 player in Major League Baseball. Despite the fact that a lot of people have forgotten about him or more likely hate him, he's still elite at what he does. In 2022, he put up 6.6 wins above replacement, which pretty much cemented him as the best second baseman in all of ball. This guy isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and he has had one of the best careers out of any baseball player in the 2010s and 2020s. Hall of Famer 100%.
Some viewers might be wondering how a pitcher with an over 4 ERA makes the list, but Zach Wheeler's been unlucky. He has a 2.83 FIP and a 3.5 WAR. He's a guy who has some insane rate stats. He strikes out a lot, he doesn't walk many batters, he keeps the ball on the ground, and he limits the barrel rate. Unfortunately, the basic stats haven't been there this year. However, we think in the second half those can be turned around because he really has had some great outings and some great stuff overall this season. And we can't forget how insane his 2021 season was, one of the better pitching seasons in a while. I think Joe Ryan might be one of the more surprising picks on this list, but let me explain why. This dude is one of the kings of strikeout rate combined with walk rate. His walk rate is incredibly low this season with an only 1.51 walks per 9 and 10 strikeouts per 9. He's very efficient with his pitches. The only thing is he has allowed a fair bit of home runs this year, which is kind of a shame because his barrels are down. But I think that Joe Ryan for the first half of the season looked like an incredible pitcher, and I think he'll only look better in the second half.
Yeah, so Paul Goldschmidt won an MVP last year, which is something that a lot of people don't even know or remember, which I kind of forgot about, which proves how underrated he is. Since his rookie season, the guy has just raked. Whether it be in Arizona or in St. Louis, he has been one of the best offensive players since 2011, which is saying a lot considering some of the talent that we've seen since then. He deserves to be on this list and deserves a lot more recognition considering the fact that since he's debuted, he's been one of the best players.
It looks like Adolis Garcia has really found his stride. He's been kind of a hit or miss offensive player in the past, but this year his power's improved and his plate discipline has improved, and he's become one of the better hitting outfielders. He's overall a really well rounded player. He's pretty good with the glove, he's a pretty solid base runner, and he's just getting runs in. I'm not a big fan of RBI, but it is something to lead the league in RBIs and he's just become a great, well-rounded player on a team of great, well-rounded players. Bo Bichette is probably going to be the guy who leads the league in hits pretty much every year. He gets a lot of hits, and this year he's been great thus far. He has a 134 WRC plus, which would be his highest since his rookie season. He's also got 3 WAR. He might not be the best shortstop defensively, which kind of knocks him down a bit. He does seem more like a second base type, but he's a guy that can get on base at a pretty good clip and hit some extra base hits at a really good clip. He's overall one of the better shortstops in baseball, even with some of his shortcomings.
Despite all the hilarious memes and drama regarding sticky stuff these past 3 seasons, Garrett Cole is still a top 10 elite pitcher in today's game. He still puts up good peripheral stats and solid outcome stats like ERA. Although he is declining a bit compared to last season and before that even, his strikeouts through 9 has gone down considerably and his walks through 9 has gone up. And I don't really see him being elite for that many more seasons at this point. I don't really like the guy, and I know a lot of you don't either as he plays for the Evil Empire, but he deserves a nod on our list, so this is where we're going to put him.
Next up, we have Marcus Semien, and Semien is the most well-rounded second baseman in the game. He's a guy that's going to give you over 750 OPS, he's going to hit a fair bit of home runs, and he's going to give you gold glove caliber defense. And this year, he's really providing that with possibly his best defensive season ever. He's an excellent player that's gotten even better since moving to second base. And he's a guy that's brought a lot of success to every franchise he's went. He was good in Oakland. He was an MVP finalist there. He had an incredible season in Toronto. And now he's been a great piece to this new resurgent Texas Rangers team.
He may strike out a fair bit, but Matt Olson is MLB's barrel king. He's a guy that hits the ball really hard and has been getting a lot of home runs. In fact, he already has 29 this season. He has a 146 WRC+. Plus. His WAR is 2.6. He's become one of the better first basemen in baseball, and that's largely because he hits with power. He's not necessarily a contact guy, but again, he has some raw power. He has some of the highest exit velocities of anybody in the game, and he's just a guy that you put in that cleanup spot, and he's going to bring home some runs with his homers. Are you feeling Randy? Randy Rosarena is one of the best players in baseball. He's got a 147 WRC+, and he's already at 2.8 WAR. He's one of those guys that's well-rounded in terms of every aspect of his game. He steals bases. He has some highlight reel plays in the field, even if his defensive numbers aren't the best. He's a guy that's really well-rounded, and this year, he's really taken a step forward in terms of plate discipline. He's walking a fair bit. He's getting on base. He's one of the American League's on-base leaders, and he's a guy that's got some really good power that's finally starting to hit big home run numbers this season.
Even though I think he's a bit overrated by Mets fans, Francisco Lindor deserves to be pretty high up on this list. I can't say that he's the most consistent player in the world, but over the course of his career, which hasn't even been 10 years, he's put up a lot of wins above replacement, and has always been a very amazing defender. Not to mention, although he dips in consistency at times, as I mentioned, Lindor is still a plus offensive player with elite defense. So, yeah, he's on the list.
In the past, I've had my doubts about Framber Valdez, but you look at it over the last few years, and there's few pitchers who've been as consistent. And this year, he really looks like he's one of the favorites for the Cy Young. He's a guy that eats innings and keeps runners off the bases. He's a ground ball machine. He has an over 60% ground ball rate pretty much every year. He's possibly the best ground ball pitcher in the game. And he's a guy that's been really consistent for an Astros team and has become their ace. And they've had a lot of great pitchers in that rotation. So to be the ace of that rotation, it's pretty special. Everyone is freaking out over Luis Arraez hitting over 380 and leading the league in batting average, but he also leads baseball in on-base percentage, and I think that's an even more important stat. This guy gets on base. He's one of the toughest outs. Now, I know players like this often get maligned by the analytics community, but you have to understand he's a guy that does not whiff. He does not strike out. He doesn't chase a lot. He only goes for pitches he knows he can put in play. And I think that's incredibly valuable for his sustainability of his contact. He is able to make this contact without striking out, and I think that's something that could allow him to be a batting champ every year.
Since the 2020 season, Kevin Gausman has been one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball, and for the past 2 seasons, he has been a top 3 pitcher in all of the league. This guy not only puts up wins above replacement, but he is a very, very good pitcher when it comes to FIP, having a combined 2.41 FIP across these past 2 seasons. The guy definitely has potential to be even higher on this list, but I'm going to need to see maybe 1 or 2 more elite seasons to justify that. So, definitely on this list. Even in just his second season, Adley Rutschman has already cemented himself as a top 2 to 3 catcher in all of baseball. Even though this year he's been a bit overrated and honestly has disappointed to some degree, the guy can do everything, whether it be hitting, fielding, or framing. He's just good at everything and would be number 1 as a catcher on this list if it weren't for one of the best catching seasons of all time.
Bryce Harper is difficult to rank because he's coming off a surgery, a Tommy John surgery to be specific, where he had a historic recovery from, but now he's kind of morphed into a bit of a slap hitter thus far. He's got a good average, but his WRC plus is only 115, and that's largely because he's not really hitting for power. Now, if you look at his expected stats, they do say he's been a bit unlucky, but it's hard to put a guy that's a DH that's not hitting the bombs much higher than this spot. He's a guy that when healthy, we know how good he can be, but right now we just don't know what player we're getting from Harper as he's coming off an injury, and he does look a little rusty.
Around 2.5 to 3 seasons ago, I told Ryan that this guy, Zach Gallen, would pop off and be one of the best pitchers in the MLB. And guess what? He's been just that. This season so far, he's been arguably the National League Cy Young, putting up great numbers when it comes to all of the stats we've been using in this video. Of course, ERA, FIP, xFIP, wins above replacement, walks through 9, and homers through 9. The guy can do it all as your pitcher, and he's already a top 5 pitcher in his short career so far, and I expect him to be even better in the future.
Wander Franco is a bit of a controversial pick this high. Some people might think it's too early, but he was possibly the most hyped prospect I've ever seen. And now things are starting to translate. He's a guy that's pretty good at everything, and that's what makes him such an elite player. He has been hands down the best defensive shortstop this year if you look at the metrics. He's been a really good hitter, a 124 WRC plus type guy, and he's stealing bases like crazy. He's got great plate discipline, he's showing more power than he ever has, he's showing that home run potential, and he's got some of the best contact skills, which I think could translate to make him the second best contact hitter after Luis Ariz. He's a guy that's going to put up 6 or 7 WAR this year, and I think he's only going to keep getting better.
Nolan Arenado has been one of the best third basemen in the league since he entered, and yes, he did beat the Coors Field Merchant allegations after being traded to the Cardinals. He's still an amazing offensive player and puts up great offensive numbers every year no matter what happens, and this year is no different, being a little bit worse than he was last year, but that's fine. He will get back up there at some point this season or next. Defensively, he's actually been a little bit worse this year, which is surprising considering his reputation, but regardless, he deserves to be on this list, and he deserves to be this high as well.
Shane McClanahan is one of baseball's most electric arms. We all know this, but he could be better. He's had a back issue this year, and when he's fully healthy, he has 4+ pitches that can get whiffs like few other pitchers. He's got those wipeout curveballs, those insane changeups, and yes, he has a 98-mile-per-hour plus fastball. Shane McClanahan is an elite pitcher. He keeps the ball on the ground, and in the past he has limited the walks. Now they're up this year, but let's see if coming back off an injury and coming back off an extended break, if he can have a second half that is worthy of winning the Cy Young. The Luis Robert top 20 player season has finally come. There's been a lot of hype about this guy being an MVP candidate every year and a guy that's capable of putting up double-digit WAR. And this season, he's finally showing why he has so much hype. He is a crazy good power hitter. He slugs home runs like few others. He steals some bases. He's got a 143 WRC plus and almost 4 WAR already. He's one of those guys that would be an AL MVP candidate if there wasn't Ohtani. He has become one of the better center fielders in baseball, and I'd argue he's been the very best center fielder this season.
Sean Murphy is by far the best catcher in Major League Baseball and is one of the best catchers since Buster Posey, I would say. I am so shocked that a guy like this even exists. He has put up 3.8 wins above replacement in just 69 games and 280 plate appearances. That puts him well over 8 wins above replacement on a 162 game pace. As a catcher, having such a high offensive output is insanely valuable, but over 70 points above average is just crazy. He has a 158 WRC plus, and like I said, he is the best defensive catcher in the league. He has no weaknesses, pretty much no flaws, and he could even be higher on this list come next season.
When we talk about the most well-rounded hitters in baseball, Yandy Diaz has to be pretty high on that list. He does not strike out very much. He walks a fair bit. Last year, he actually walked more than he struck out. This year, he's had a few more strikeouts, but this year he's also had more home runs. He's a guy that hits with power. The only issue that he's really had is that he's gotten a lot of ground balls, so that power hasn't always translated to home runs. But now it just feels like every time he gets the ball in the air, it's going out of the park this year. He's just one of the most well-rounded hitters, and he shows that with a 165 WRC+, plus, which is second in the American League. Yandy Diaz is underrated, and it's time that people take notice of him being one of the very best players in all of baseball.
Even as a rookie, Corbin Carroll has been an absolute stud, being one of the best offensive players so far this season. And guess what? He's been playing with a bit of an injury bug, and he's only a rookie, so he's only going to get better. This guy can pretty much do it all. Even on the defensive end, I like his upside just because he's such a speedy player. He hasn't really put up those defensive stats yet that we want to see, but he still has very high upside in that regard. Not to mention, he's one of the league's best base runners and will improve even more significantly on the offensive end. This guy is going to be a top 15, even top 10, possibly top 5 player for years to come. If it weren't for a few injured seasons, we'd be considering Corey Seager to be a no-doubt future first ballot Hall of Fame player. He's just that good. He had one of the best rookie seasons of all time that's been quickly forgotten about because of a lot of that those injury bugs. He had a World Series appearance and a win, which doesn't really matter much, but he did get the MVP of that World Series, so that's good to consider. His time in Texas has been awesome, and if it weren't for Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and other players of that caliber existing, then Corey Seager really could win MVP every year for the next 3 to 5 years. I genuinely mean that. He's that good. As baseball fans and the baseball media, we tend to think of Nolan Arenado's diving plays and Manny Machado's electrifying home runs, but we always tend to skip over this guy by the name of Jose Ramirez, who since 2016 has been the best third baseman in the entire MLB. Now, this guy, not only is he elite offensively by every metric of the word metric, but he's also elite at defense and base running. He has pretty much no flaws in his game, yet consistently is underrated by the greater MLB community because he is not an electric personality unlike other players at his position. But this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that he doesn't pass the eye test, and it doesn't matter that he doesn't swear and try to injure other players. He is still the best third baseman and comes in at 11 on our list.
Spencer Strider is probably the best pitcher in baseball, and you might look at his ERA and be like, what? No way. But then you look at his strikeout numbers. He's a guy that's going to lead baseball in strikeouts every single year. His strikeout rate is insane. He gets whiffs on his pitches. He still needs to develop a third pitch, but he's overall a guy that's going to be the Cy Young frontrunner pretty much every year at this rate. He has a near 40% strikeout rate. He doesn't walk too many batters, and he manages contact pretty well. He's a guy that's going to lead baseball in Sierra, FIP, XFIP, all the stats pretty much every year, and that's why he's deserving of a top 10 spot. While he may not provide much in the field, Yordan Alvarez is one of the best offensive players in all of baseball. He has a 168 WRC plus this year, although he has dealt with some injuries, but the previous year he had a 185 and was an MVP candidate. He's a guy that came into the league as a superstar, and he just continues to rake every year. The Astros are a force of nature, but I think Yordan is their best player. He's just so good at the plate. The combination of contact ability and power is absolutely insane. He barrels the ball like few others, and he has great plate discipline as well. Yordan is definitely a top 10 player. Yes, we all know about the suspension, but Fernando Tatis Jr. really is worthy of all the early hype he got. He is an incredible hitter. He's got insane power, he's got great contact skills, and he's got pretty good plate discipline. The other thing that's worth mentioning with him is he's become one of the best defensive outfielders there is. In the field, he has become an elite defender, a gold glove caliber guy. He is near the top of the DRS leaderboard and the OAA leaderboard, and for good reason. He has some crazy plays out there, and he's just been insane from start to finish this season.
As a Giants fan, I still can't believe that Freddie Freeman is a Los Angeles Dodger. This guy has arguably the best longevity out of any player on this list across the past 5 to 6 seasons. He just is such an amazing hitter, not only for contact, but for power as well. Sure, he plays first base, which really isn't a premium position, and he's expected to be good offensively, as all first basemen are. But still, Freddie Freeman is just such a consistently amazing hitter, and every time he's up against my Giants, I'm just like, yep, he is going to get on base. And he usually does, because he is that good. Number 7, Freddie Freeman. Juan Soto is one of the most consistently underrated players in Major League Baseball. Why, you ask? Well, his batting average isn't quite as high as some people want it to be, but this doesn't matter. Let's look at another stat that actually matters, and that's walk percentage. The guy walks more than pretty much any player in Major League Baseball. His WRC plus is 150, which is elite and a Hall of Fame level stat, especially for a guy who walks at the rate that he does. He just gets on base, to quote the famous Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill from Moneyball. And he is one of my favorite players, and he will be a Giant in 2025 because the Padres are one of the most incompetent organizations in professional sports. So, yeah, thank you.
Coming in at number 5, we have Mr. Consistent, and that's Mookie Betts. He's good at everything. He's a good base runner, he's a good power hitter, he's a great contact hitter. He's having one of the best seasons of his career this year. He has around an 160 WRC plus, and he's closing in on 5 WAR already, which is pretty crazy. He's just an incredible athlete, and I feel he's been overlooked because he's playing with so many other great talents, both in LA and in this era. But he's one of the better outfielders of our time and is a definite Hall of Famer, and has a good chance of being a runner-up for MVP this year.
Fishman comes in at number 4 on our list. After having pretty much the number 1 spot on lock for the past 8 to 10 years, he's declined a little bit these past few years, not only just due to injury, but because this year his offensive output has not been nearly as good as previous seasons. With another IL stint in 2023, I don't really know what the future for Mike Trout even holds. Will he be able to be as good as he has been in the past? I don't know, but regardless, because of his longevity and ability to just get on base, the guy deserves to be pretty high on our list, and we have him at number 4.
Ronald Acuna Jr. is a freak of nature. He is one of the most well-rounded players we've seen. He's an incredible hitter, and he's showing his contact abilities better this season than ever before. He's one of the best base stealers. He's already got over 40 stolen bases. He's already got over 5 WAR, and he just seems like the obvious choice to be MVP this season. He's just a perfect player, and he's closing in on that number 2 spot. He's honestly that great. He's got a bit of everything. Defense could be better, but his arm is incredible. Ronald Acuna Jr. is just one of the best players in the game.
There's not much I really need to say about Aaron Judge. The guy just hits bombs. He is the best power hitter in the MLB since Barry Bonds. He walks, he gets on base, he strikes out, but that's okay because, like I said, he gets on base. I don't really need to say much, and now for my frustrations with Aaron Judge as a Giants fan, and that is, you betrayed the Bay Area, man. You used us for leverage, and then you signed with the evil Yankees empire, who will not win a ring during your tenure. Meanwhile, the Giants have a better record, and had you joined us, you would have made us the best team in the National League, and probably the betting favorites along with the Braves to win the National League. So thanks, Aaron. You're screwed for the next 10 years, and go Giants. Shohei Ohtani is the most impressive athlete to ever pick up a ball in any sport. Imagine being a quarterback and being the top defensive player on your team. That is what Ohtani is, but even better somehow. He takes up one less roster spot, being able to play 2 positions. He hits, especially this year, better than literally any other player in baseball. And the guy can run 20 miles an hour and throw 102 and is a great pitcher. This guy, he's real. And that is insane to consider. And his impact has changed the league literally for the rest of eternity.
If you look at the stats on Ohtani, they're just absolutely insane. An 184 WRC plus as a hitter, and he's also a pitcher. That is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. He's got 35 home runs this year. He's already got more than he had last year. He's on that crazy of a pace. His pace is actually around that of Aaron Judge's last year, which is just absolutely crazy because Aaron Judge set a record. And again, Ohtani is doing this as a pitcher. And as a pitcher, he's also incredible. It seems like every year, some years he's a better hitter, some years he's a better pitcher. But this year he's been a great pitcher. He's getting a lot of strikeouts, has one of the highest strikeout rates in all of MLB. He's got a 3.5 ERA, which isn't necessarily where he would want it to be. But yeah, he makes up for that by having incredible strikeout stuff that just gets batters to swing and miss all the time. But yeah, Ohtani is the absolute choice for number one. I don't really think it's up for debate anymore. But anyways, guys, thank you for watching this video. Let us know your thoughts below, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.